excellent speaker, and one that really needs no introduction because all of you know her, I know. But I like to brag a little bit about this. We went through 12 years of schooling together, from the first grade in a 2-room schoolhouse out in Scope Valley through being a country bumpkins and coming into junior high school and all those city kids scaring us, and then on into high school. And as you know, that she was our first Historical Society director, museum director, and I believe she was here over 20 years, right, Billy? How many years were you here?
22.
22 years that she was here as the Historical Society director. She needs no further introduction, but let's welcome Billie Howard.
Thank you. I can't believe I know all these faces. I just can't believe it. I've been around a long time. Well, today we're going to have a tale of PEO. We're going to talk about the PEO. It's been in this county and in this town for a lot of years. It's a philanthropic education organization where women celebrate the advancement of women, educate women through scholarships, grants, awards, loans, and stewardship of County College, and motivate women to achieve their highest aspirations. Now, that's not to say we don't appreciate you men. PEO was founded, the national PEO was founded in 1889 by 7 ladies in Superior, Nebraska. And a young lady by the name of Jean Todd was walking down the streets and met Carrie Briggs, who was one of the founding leaders. And Mrs. Briggs stopped her and told her a brand new society was being ordered, and she wanted her to be in it. So she called it PEO, and Jean had just acquired her new teaching license. So later that year, Nebraska's Chapter D was organized, and Jean Todd became one of its members. 5 years later now, with her parents, she joined the Western Migration and traveled to small logging town of Shelton. That's it. And sprawled along the tidelands of southern Puget Sound on the edge of a wilderness of trees, dusty in the summer, muddy in the winter, its only means of communication with the outside world was by boat and most impassable logging roads. Jean called it 700 souls among the stumps. That was the population.
700 people?
700, yeah. Then. While teaching in the schools of Mason County for recreation, she joined a small singing group called the Cecilias. And they were connected with the Episcopal Women's Guild, and they sang whenever the priest was in town. So they didn't have there we are. Jean is sitting down. She's got her head looking at something on the left-hand side. And that's Jean. I think they were good too. The girls enjoyed their association, so Jean, remembering her Nebraska affiliation, told them PEO and wrote to the Supreme Chapter. So the president of the Supreme Chapter, never having heard of Shelton, and either overlooking the size of the community or Jean having neglected to tell her how many people were here, granted permission to form a chapter. Because of their isolation, Jean was authorized to serve as organizer, and on January 9th, 1897, Washington's second chapter was born. The first chapter is Chapter A. It's located in Seattle, and making ours Chapter B. So, this, Tiffany, excuse the picture, but that's kind of a lopsided picture.
I haven't seen that one.
This is the Graham house where they organized it. And this house now belongs to Tiffany Schwander, who is here today. I'm so glad. She lives in Hillsboro, Oregon, or Beaverton, Oregon.
Where's that building?
She's a descendant of one of the founders. Right?
Yes, Edith. Edith Neal and Graham.
Okay.
Yeah. Edith
Your mom there?
Neal. Nope, she's not here
Okay,
today.
good. Tiffany's the son of Shelton people know this guy. Tom Nealon, the daughter of Tom Nealon,
Great-granddaughter
and
of
the
Wallace.
granddaughter.
Great-granddaughter of Wallace Nealon.
Yeah, Wallace Nealon, Wallace Nealon Boulevard. That's her grandfather, great grandfather. So, okay, you can turn it. Charter members, here they are. Jean Todd Fredson, Emma Tremper, Bertha Hampson, Edith Nealon, Draham. Edith was married to the Shelton mayor, George Draham. And Fanny Colville Webb, Molly Snyder Lee, Zuella Shelton, great-granddaughter David Shelton, and Winifred Nealon. So it was kind of these were the movers and shakers of Shelton. In 1904, there were 7 chapters in Washington, so a state organization could be affected. So they were asked to send delegates to Seattle to a meeting with this objective. Now, no one really cared to go, as members liked things the way they were, but duty called. Jean Todd Fredson, by this time, had married Alf Fredson, and Edith Nealon Draham was chosen as delegates. On the night before they left, the chapter gave them a party and a big box lunch. In the darkness of 5 o'clock in the morning, the old rickety horse-drawn bus with kerosene lanterns to guide the way called for them, and it rattled over the rough mile stretch from town to the dock where they boarded the city of Shelton.
That previous picture was Shelton?
Pardon?
The
That's
previous?
not the city of Shelton?
Wow.
I think it isn't.
Did you take it?
It's a steamer. They transferred in midstream to another steamer in Olympia, which they could take to Seattle. They arrived in Seattle at 2 p.m. where they were met to take to a private home and entertained. I understand they transferred boats in midstream, and they had to walk a plank. How they did it with those dresses, I'll never know. From one boat to the other to get to the one to take them to Seattle. This, I believe, is the Saul Simpson, but
Looks like.
it's the same type. The next surprise came on the second day of the Seattle Convention when it was announced that conventions would be held yearly. And Shelton's turn would be the next year in alphabetical order. Shocked but valiant, they went home to relate their startling news. In the anxiety, they almost forgot to mention that Jean had been elected to the Washington Grand Chapter Board as its first recording secretary. She was elected as vice president the following year. Jean Todd Fredson remembered the Shelton Convention, and I quote, "State officers and 14 tired delegates arrived by boat, voicing their doubts as to the existence of a town called Shelton. Later, on the wall of the convention hall, the Oddfellows Hall, I love it. They were shown a map drawn for their edification on which the town Shelton was dollar size, and the others were merely fly specks. On the convention's first day, they adjourned at noon for an afternoon outing. It was a grand day, warm and sunny. Of course, being in the horse and buggy days, rigs used to carry the visitors over the mile to the dock, and Joe Deere, a local oysterman, helped them aboard his oyster scow. That's another time. Those long dresses must have been really fun. They sat on boxes, maybe the floor. With his launch, Joe towed the scow up the bay 3 miles to Oakland, where the clams were steaming in the pits on the beach, and hot baked beans were served in big clamshells. Later years, PEO from attending chapters called the Spirit of Shelton Convention in 1905. Now that's the oyster launch that he loaded them in and then took them up to the clam took them to the other one, the other Oakland Bay. At that time, Shelton was rather a backward community. What culture it had came from the hearts and minds of its inhabitants. Their daily sound of music were logging trains rumbling through town on the way to Oakland Bay to dump their logs. It was music to the pocketbook, if not to their ears. Shelton didn't even have a high school at that time. Until 1906, graduates from the 8th grade had to board in the city of Olympia if they were to continue their education. The first high school graduation took place in 1910. There were 5 students. Dora Fredson was listed as one of them. There she is. Dora was the sister-in-law of Jean and became a member of Chapter B. We have Fredson descendants here today, don't we? We have, yep. Where's Mike?
Mike's here too.
Mike, go there too. Okay, good. And where was I? 5 students. Dora Fredson was listed as one of them. Dora was the sister-in-law of Jean and became a charter member of Chapter B. Dora was a teacher also and later became principal of the new high school. In 1910, school was held in what later became the Lincoln School, with graduation taking place in the Graham Theater. The City Hall is now located where Lincoln School was. And I believe Mike drew the, didn't you dry the, I think so. For the new City Hall to look a little bit like that.
I hope it does.
Mark Reed built the high school in 1923 and dedicated it to his wife, Irene Simpson Reed, and presented it to the district. Irene was a member of the school board from 1999 to 1940, and she personally signed every diploma. Mark Reed was the head of Shelton's timber industry and a noted political leader. You notice we don't have any pictures of the men here today, girls? Okay. Soon after its organization, Chapter B set up a small reading room as the beginning of a public library. There we are. When the space was outgrown, Chapter B's Mary Simpson, mother of Irene Reed, erected a building on the corner of 5th and Railroad, 5th Street and Railroad Avenue in memory of her husband, Saul Simpson. Saul's influence was a big influence in the city. The Alaska-Yukon Pacific Exposition was held in Seattle in 1909 to celebrate the discovery of gold in Alaska. Members of Chapter B in long formal gowns served as hostesses for Mason County Day. Their job was to persuade visiting representatives attending the fair to make a tour of Puget Sound, stopping at Shelton where Chapter B would entertain the group, this time at a picnic in Neyland Park. Of course, it probably didn't look like that then, but how many remember that wading pool? Boy, it was a great place to go, take kids. The hostesses are pictured in this photo. Can you go back? There we are. Okay. These are the girls that were hostesses for PEO in 1909. Molly Snyder-Lee, Irene S. Reed, Edith Neelan Graham, Jessie Bowen Pritchard, Delia Neelan, Miriam Knight, and Jenny Ellen Birch. And that was the mother and daughter. Miriam Knight is her daughter, Jenny. The chapter also sponsored art exhibits at the Mason County Fair, which was held on Luke Field. Jean Todd Fredson described it as one corner of the fair building was reserved for PEOs who arranged the exhibits and served tea to the visitors. Many a tired farm woman gratefully rested here and was refreshed with a cup of cheers. And this was the first fair, I believe, fair building. It was called Irwin Hall. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, is that down in the center of Mel Chevrolet building?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's where, it's where the Simpson.
It's where the Simpson,
Huh?
yeah, Green Diamond office
Green Diamond is, yeah.
The one
No.
you're thinking about though is the old Neelan Hall. Neeland, also known as Doyle's Hall. It's still there.
Okay,
Yeah.
is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's where this,
That was
yeah,
Earl
Green
Wynn Hall.
Diamond, and Earl Neeland and Winifred Neeland. Winifred Neeland, you had a picture of her at the beginning. That's named after, Earl Neeland built that, combining his wife's name.
Okay. Cool. Okay, in 1920, Jesse Pritchard was elected to the state chapter board as second vice president. The state PEO Reciprocity Bureau, now the Washington State Program Lending Library, which was established that year under her chairmanship. I remember Jessie Pritchard at church. She used to go to the Episcopal Church, and she sat right up in front, Ramrod Straight. She was an old lady then, when I was a kid, and it just, nice lady. Miriam Knight, superintendent of schools, one of Mason County's early educators, and her two daughters were listed as Chapter B members. The largest county school outside of Shelton was named in her honor. Chapter B created the Miriam Knight Achievement Award to an outstanding girl of the senior class of Ivy Street High School. We still give that award, only we don't award it to high school graduates, do we? No. Where's Ellie? Ellie knows. And so we decided some time ago to award women who had a hard time with their education, either because of schooling or had to drop out of college. They can apply for it through Olympic College and continue their education. So that's kind of a new Chapter GQ in Shelton gives to high school students. Still. Fanny Wright, a pioneer woman lawyer in partnership with her husband, is also listed as a member of Chapter B, and her son Charles Wright was a well-known Mason County judge. Laura Fredgen, a 53 member of Chapter B when she died, was a legal secretary who supervised the compilation of the first complete set of abstract books in Mason County. She was deeply loved by her chapter and known as Mrs. PEO. And also, again quoting Jean Todd Fredson, the years rolled by and all at once it dawned on us that we were 50 years old. This called for a celebration, and on January 9, 1947, a golden anniversary banquet highlighted the year. And behind the screen on the counter is a album that she put together for that. And it's fun to look through if you have a chance to do that. Well, the state chapter organizer heard the news. She thought it would be most fitting if Chapter B would put on the works. So the initiation ceremony in state convention was held. And so for the convention, stand-in candidate Helen McCreevy Anderson wore a maroon silk dress which was worn by her mother at the first inaugural ball when she danced with the governor. Chapter completed its 50 years in grand style. This is Helen McCreevy Anderson. In front of her house, there's her home. The Union, still there, still coming along. McCreevy organization is trying to restore it. That's just cool. Okay, fast forward now to 1973, when Chapter B's Edie Larson was elected corresponding secretary of the Washington State Chapter. She followed through the offices to become state chapter president in 1979. The presidential theme was "Life is a Song, Love is a Music." Edie is in California right now, recovering with her daughter Shane, recovering from an operation on her back and her neck. And Shane wrote me the other day and said that she's walking and talking and is anxious to get back up here. And will as soon as they release her from therapy. So that's good. It's been 6 months. Yeah, a long time that she's been down there. But she's going to be okay. Chapter B became a Cotty Golden Anniversary Chapter that year in her honor. This is Cotty Chapter. of County College in 1884. Did I say that right? Nevada?
Nevada, Missouri.
It's not Nevada, it's Nevada, Missouri is where it's located. It's a girls' college, and we have a student there now from Shelton going to school on a scholarship. By then, Shelton had grown tenfold, and the membership had outgrown the capacity of members' homes. We used to meet in people's homes until we got too big. In Edie's year as organizer, 7 Chapter B members, guided by Lee Hansen, petitioned to form a daytime chapter, and in 1979 established a second Shelton chapter, GQ. Lee then, as a member of GQ, was elected to the state chapter executive board. Seems a moment there to be. It all began with Chapter A, was written in 1992 by Vicki Corey. Working with her on the book were Mary Callis, Paula Kramer, Joanne Hall, Linda Darst, and our own Edie Larson and Lee Hansen. There's 2 of those books on the counter. One was Kay Adler's and one was Henley's.
Jerry.
This is Henley's. And they're kind of fun. They have every chapter in the state is there, so. And Shelton being Chapter B, Chapter A, B, C, and so forth. In recognition to their service to the community, Dr. Berwin Thomas wrote a history of the chapter that was presented to the international chapter, and there's a copy in the archives of the Mason County Historical Society as well. Berwin's mother was a member of his sisterhood, and his wife Emma was also a member. In 1914, Chapter B, Bill Ostrich was elected president of the Washington State Chapter, and her presidential theme was, "Let's get going for a peaceful tomorrow." Chapter B members bring their history up to date with a quote from Shakespeare saying, "The heritage of the past is the seed which brings forth the harvest of the future." Now, having completed 121 years, oh no, we're on our 121st year now, Chapter B members continue to make themselves felt in a civic way, still career women utilizing their talents in a wide variety of occupations. The following are pictures from of members and their BILs. Oh, this is going to get you. BIL, you know what that stands for? Brothers in Love. That's what the men are. That a kick. But it works. They do a lot of good stuff. And, okay, this is Oyster Fence 2010 art sale. Fundraiser, garden tour of tea. I guess we're going to have another garden tour this year. It's really nice if you have a chance to go. Christmas social. Picnic social. Do a lot of social stuff, don't we? Don't kid me. I believe that's out at Myrna's. Is that your house? Is that not your house?
No, it's a Jansen.
Well, we know where that one is. We took a tour of the There's a display of memorabilia on the behind the, oh, this is our Marion Knight Achievement Award recipients. These 2 won scholarships. I don't have their names, so do you have their names?
Rachel. Rachel's last name. I don't
And this
have
is
her name.
fundraiser for Things for Community Life. The gal on the left is Barb Weezer. She's chairman or the organizer for the Community Lifeline.
These are just.
Dr. H. Neal's home. Webb home. Charlie and Mel Lewis's home. Maddox has lived there now.
That's it.
That it? that's it, I guess. Thank you for letting us tell our story. I hope that if there anyone that interested in being a PEO, talk to one of us. We'd be glad to steer you in the right direction. It's a fun organization. It's a social organization as well as one that does work for the community. So,
Any questions?
Yeah. How many people here went to Lincoln grade school?
how many?
Went to Lincoln grade school?
How many people here went to Lincoln grade school, he wants to know?
Oh, Lincoln Grade School.
Okay, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Oh, we got them all over here.
9, 10. 10 people here went to Lincoln grade
Jack
school.
went to Lincoln. Congrats.
Any further comments or questions?
Thank you.
If not, let's go.